margin perspective.
Well, we've got another launch elsewhere taking Elon Musk's attention. And this is it right now, a crucial step in the goal of taking humans to the moon and Mars. SpaceX attempting another launch.
Jonathan, we have liftoff. Starship, Super Heavy booster, and Starship spacecraft have cleared the launch pad. What you see on your screen is the most powerful launch system developed by mankind, heading out of Earth's atmosphere. 16.7 million pounds of thrust generated by the 33 Raptor engines at the base of the Super Heavy booster. 55-second mark, we hit max Q, the moment of the maximum aerodynamic stress or pressure on the rocket, working towards a top speed in orbital speeds of 17,500 miles per hour. This is unprecedented, Jonathan, what you're seeing on your screen. Remember, the goal here was very simple. Clear the launch tower, clear the pad. At the 3-minute mark, we expect the two stages, the Super Heavy booster and the Starship spacecraft, to separate from one another. The Super Heavy booster will then fall back down to Earth and splash down into the Gulf of Mexico, where it will sink. There will be no attempt to recover the Super Heavy booster. Starship, the spacecraft, will arc towards Hawaii and travel at an orbital height of 150 to 250 kilometers above the Earth for about an hour, perform a maneuver burn to come back into Earth's atmosphere, and then splash down 140 miles from the coast of Hawaii, 250 kilometers. They will not attempt to recover it. Jonathan Ferro in New York, Mohammed Al-Arian as well. I don't know how to make this a confluence between markets, economics, and the future of mankind, but all I'll say is this is a ginormous moment for the space industry. And once again, Elon Musk has done what he said he'd do, later than he said he would, and broken a barrier when it comes to what's technologically possible for the space industry.
Ed, stay close. We'll keep running these pictures and follow this as it evolves. Dan Ives, I want to bring you back in. Elon Musk, Dan, never mind Tesla. Can you talk about this for a moment? What an effort by that man.
Look, I mean, incredible. And I think what he's done with Tesla, with SpaceX, just continues to sort of be the gold standard. And I think that's something that ultimately he's in this position of strength. And for Tesla, that's why it's also, just see with earnings, it's held to a higher standard because of what Musk has created.
We're going to return to those pictures in a moment, Dan. And for those of you at home following this, you can carry on following it in those pictures on the screen right now. But Dan, you and I need to talk about Tesla. That stock is lower. Margins are an issue. Is it keeping you up at night, Dan? You mentioned in your notes that it might keep Tesla investors up at night. Is it something that you're concerned about? And I think what everyone wants to know, Dan, you're so bullish on this company, on the leadership from Elon Musk. We all want to know what would change your mind.
Yeah, look, I think it was a concern, no doubt. I mean, no rose-colored glasses that it came under 20%. Now, look, right now they're going on the aggressive, going after market share, and I think that's the smart strategic poker move. But I do believe the next few quarters are going to be pivotal in terms of trying to keep margins around here. If you have more price cuts and this just continues to go down from a margin perspective, I think that would be a clear negative going forward. And that's why the stock's down here.
So then think of Amazon early on, where the strategy was dominate, 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 put up barriers to entry to others. Would that work here? Will we look back and think that this was a smart strategic move, or we will look back and think that this was silly, that you can't dominate this market?
Yeah, Mohammed, I think it's a great question. I think here they're essentially putting an iron fence around their install base. It's an EV arms race that's playing out across the board. And, you know, it's hard to argue with Musk. I mean, essentially, Musk has been playing, you know, he's been playing chess, others have been playing checkers. And I think what we're seeing here, it's the right strategic move for the long term, but in the near term, it's a rip the Band-Aid off moment. And this is going to be transitory, what we see with margins.
Let's just build on that a moment, Dan, and talk about multiples. What I want to buy when I have a name like this with a multiple like this one is a high-growth, high-margin business, not an EV arms race. Dan, does that not resonate with you at all?
Oh, look, it definitely does in the near term. I think if we sit here a year and a half, 2 years from now, and this continues to be the narrative, then no doubt. I mean, this will be a major problem from a multiple and from where the stock is. But I do believe that this is sort of a pivotal time, given the macro, to really go on the offensive, cut prices, and make sure in this sort of arms race that they put that what I'll call an iron fence around the install base, because it is an important moment. It's almost a moment of truth for Tesla, and investors really are going to now have to navigate what margins look like the next 1, 2, 3 quarters.
Just want to get an update on that attempt from SpaceX, from Ed Ludlow on the West Coast. Ed, what have you got?
Not a completely successful mission, Jonathan. We were tracking at the 3-minute mark for the Starship spacecraft to separate from the Super Heavy booster. That did not happen. Basically, the full stack remained connected, and once it reached a certain height, the combined Super Heavy booster and Starship spacecraft started falling back down to Earth, rotating in midair. At some point, an explosion was visible at high altitude while the combined Starship system fell back down to Earth. In other words, it just didn't separate. But remember, you could see on your screen at one point SpaceX employees cheering, because simply clearing the launch pad is regarded as a high degree of success for SpaceX. This mission all about gathering data. This is just the start of taking Starship from a developmental system to an operational system. So we will hear more about the technical reasons why, but we got to a certain height. The thing didn't separate the 2 stages, and then it blew up. But my goodness, that was fun.
To your point, Ed, how do we define success today? And Elon Musk himself lowered the bar quite a lot over the last couple of days, didn't he?
Yeah, you'll remember that on Sunday night he did a Twitter Spaces for subscribers only, where he just continually hammered that point. It may not happen at all, and even if it does, the principal concern was any damage to the launch pad or stage 0, because the launch pad is an essential part of the launch system. It might not be the rocket itself, but it is highly technical and expensive to develop. They cleared the pad. There wasn't any standing damage, so that in itself is a success. But the fact that they were able to get to such high altitude but not have stage separation, they will simply take the data generated, work out what went wrong, and what we're hearing from SpaceX is that allows them to plan a cadence of next attempts. We are still some way away, John, from this being sort of meaningfully operational, either carrying Starlink satellites into orbit or humans, which is destined for the back end of 2024 and beyond.
It's the first step of a much bigger, broader effort. Appreciate it, Ed, as always, and looking forward to the program a little bit later this morning, or rather this afternoon, midday, the Tech Show. Bloomberg Technology, Caroline Hyde, Ed Ludlow. Looking forward to that. Dan, I just want to squeeze in one question to you, and then I'm going to wrap things up with Mohammed. Dan Ives, we talked about margins. What on earth is going on with inventory? Why would that be ticking higher as they're cutting prices?
Well, look, I think that is definitely a question that we see in the U.S. I do think China is really where demand is starting to tick up. And that's what I view in the next month or two. That inventory is ultimately going to come down. The price cuts have sort of stabilized. And that's why in 2Q and 3Q, that's what I view as sort of an inflection point in terms of where this volume margin story starts to take the next level.
Dan, appreciate it, sir. Dan Ives of Wedbush. Still bullish on the name, but just bringing in that price target a little bit. Mohammed, great to have you with us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
A final word. What are you focused on now going into May 3rd with this Fed?
I'm just focusing on the narrative as to what happens after May 3rd and whether they can convince the market that their forward policy guidance is credible. You know, they've been pretty consistent on telling us what happens after May 3rd, which is very little. We're going to stay there. The market and all the narrative is that's not going to happen. We've got to have these two things converge one way or the other.
Well, the data and time will take care of that at some point. Mohammed, fantastic to catch up with you, sir, as always. Mohammed Al-Arian. Coming up on this program, Secretary Yellen preparing to deliver remarks on China economic ties.
We believe that it is an important bilateral relationship, the U.S.-China relationship, even as we're talking about strategic competition.
That conversation up next.